So I would like to start the day off by talking about, we're kind of living in a world and it's full of noise, but yet somehow we're all so blind to hurting right in front of us. And kind of what I mean by that is I was walking into the store over the weekend and I noticed that there was this dude that looked kind of weathered, I guess would be a good way to put it. So when I was walking up, it's pretty cold outside, maybe 36 degrees. His toes were hanging out the front of his shoes. His it looked like maybe overalls, but he had so many different layers on that they were kind of hanging down. So I don't know if it was like overalls or like maybe a coverall. But so he had about three or four different shirts on, tattered, holes all in it, and he kind of had like a smell. I would give it like a maybe not a mildew smell, like a sour smell, like it got wet but then dried back out and then wet again. And so when I was walking in, I stopped and asked him. I said, "Hey, is there anything you would need in here?" And he said, "I could use some boots and socks." And so I said, "Well, let's go in. Let's get some." And so we're walking through the store and we're making our way back towards the boots, and I'm kind of having an irony moment. Like I came in here to buy stuff for the holidays, stuff that's good, and just spending money that I don't necessarily have to spend because stuff's going good for me. And this guy just wants some socks and some boots, and it's kind of putting it into perspective of how oblivious we get in our own lives to pain and suffering around us. And not that that has anything to do with like, I didn't do anything to cause that, but I have been blessed enough to help somebody that might be going through that to an extent. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And so, as we're walking through, he's kind of telling me about how he makes clothes. And I was thinking, that's kind of a cool hobby. But I got to thinking, like, maybe it's not a hobby. Maybe it's like a necessity for him. And, he's finding different articles of clothing and he's cutting them and sewing them back together in, to make him something that's new or to maybe just get something practical that works, that fits, and it works for him. And so I noticed his pants were pretty wore out. So I asked him, I said, "Hey, would you like some pants?" And he says, if that's possible. And I said, yeah, no problem. And so he gets a pair of pants and he gets some socks and then he gets some boots. And, he could have went to any boot on the aisle, but he went to like, I wouldn't say the cheapest boot on the aisle, but he kind of went to like a police interceptor looking boot. Like, I guess what like a law enforcement would wear or like maybe like a military, but it was like in the color black, like a sleek black looking boot, but it was kind of thick and it looked kind of rigid. But there was it is Walmart, so there wasn't like crazy brands there, but there was some pretty nice boots. But he didn't choose to get those. He chose to go, and I didn't give him a price, and I just told him let's go get something, and I didn't say nothing. I let him pick what he wanted to. So he got these boots, and he got some socks, and he got some pants. And as we're walking up, he said, "Would it be okay if I got a drink?" And I said, "Yeah, get a drink. You want a candy bar or something?" And so he got him a Coke. I think he got a Coke and maybe a Mr. Good bar, is I think what it was. And so we ring all of his stuff up there. And I noticed that the lady at the register was kind of really looking at him when because I was kind of meandering down the aisle and I hadn't got up to the aisle yet. So he put all this stuff on the counter and I noticed that she kind of was looking at him like, okay. And so he put his stuff on and scanned it and then he stepped out the way. And so I paid and then I guess she kind of seen what was happening. So she tried to kind of turn her demeanor, but her demeanor was more of like, I don't want to say the word disgust, but like it it wasn't the same demeanor she had towards me when I walked up. And so I got to noticing, like, okay, there's that. And then as we're walking out, they don't even stop him, right? The boots aren't in a bag because they wouldn't fit in a bag. And like I said, I got the receipt from her. So he kind of took off walking as I was getting the receipt. And so they don't stop him. And, I give the receipt to the guy. And anytime I'm in Walmart, they don't let me walk out without the receipt at all. So, I give the receipt to the guy and he's like, here you go. And so then the guy, the homeless guy was like, he said, sometimes I kind of wish somebody would, ask me for, he was kind of saying like, they know I wasn't the one paying, so I wouldn't have the receipt. And it kind of made me feel like he was saying that people don't treat him as like a human, or maybe they don't look at him with respect because of his circumstances. And as we're walking through the store, he told me that he had got hurt at work. It was just him, and since he couldn't afford to pay the bills, it kind of snowballed into the car got gone, the house got gone, and then before he knew it, he was on the street and he's got a broken heel. He couldn't really do much to get with it, and so there he couldn't get any money coming in, and life just built up, and that's how he got in the position he was. But he was real humble, and he was very good spirits, and it was kind of crazy to me to think that the guy that was there was in, his life was kind of falling, his life was kind of at, I don't necessarily rock bottom, because, he might not have the same outlook on that, but to a normal person, they would think like his life was as bad as you could get at that moment. It's 36 degrees outside, his toes are hanging out of his boots, and he is in good spirits. And so I started thinking, and I've been pondering on it a couple of days, and I'll be honest, I've recorded this episode 40 times and I've deleted it and I've started over because I don't know my words, and I don't want to, I don't want to trip over my own words. And so I've been trying to, nail this podcast down to get it perfect. And maybe it's not supposed to be perfect, but so it got me looking like I go through life and, I've done pretty well for myself. I kind of got a decent amount of stuff going for me, and I'm always worried about this and I'm always worried about that. And some days I'll start the day off bad, and it's more of my attitude is bad. And when you have a bad attitude, when you start the day, it will hold this, it'll change the whole directory of your day. That, if you start off with a bad attitude, you're going to have a bad day. It's just how it is. You can't, if you start off irritated, your whole day will follow that whole irritated path and nothing goes right. But this guy who's got nothing going right in his life is positive. And so that tells me that it's all about the way you choose to look at your situation. And if you let your situation get you down, then it's going to hold you down. And if you realize that this suffering is maybe temporary, but just because I'm in a dark place and I'm down on my luck, I can either choose to let that bring my whole spirit down, or choose to say, all right, I'm not in the best circumstances. My circumstances aren't favorable, but I'm going to be okay. I'm here. There's still some stuff good in my life. So the way he's looking at it is just a very good way to look at a bad situation. And so having said that, it really got me thinking about how blind we are to suffering around us, and whether it's financially, emotionally, like we're all walking through life and there's something going on with everybody, and obviously they're not going to come out right and tell you that, but you're at work, tempers get to flaring, you get into it with somebody else, and now you guys are going back and forth. And you might not even be like, there might not be nothing too bad going on in your life. You're just thinking he disrespected you, and you're going to show him, and he ain't going to talk to you like that. So you respond back with anger, but he could have a kid that's in the hospital right now, and he can't be there because he's got to pay his bills. And so where you're just responding out of anger because you're trying to show him you're still a man and ain't nobody gonna talk to you like that. You might not know what skeletons he's got in his closet, or vice versa. You could be going through something and he could just be doing that to you, and he don't understand the skeletons that you got in your closet. And it's not up for us to take on the burdens of somebody else, but we can have empathy for what they could have going on, and feel like and understand that our actions could contribute positively or contribute negatively to what they have going on currently in their life. And so I would try to, in my life from now on, I'm going to try to contribute positively instead of negative. And I've been in the situation where, you're not going to talk to me like that. I'll show you. And I'm not going to say that won't ever happen again, because sometimes I will forget, and anger will spark, and, you just come off. But it is so important. And I think in today's age, because the amount of lack of compassion to one another is at an all-time low. We don't have any compassion to anybody, and some of us do, but for the majority of the population right now, there's no compassion. And we don't even notice people in our own cities that are starving or hungry or broke down on the side of the road. And it is kind of a hard line to walk, because there are so many people that have taken advantage and been an opportunist for people that are doing good and are trying to help people, and they kind of weasel their way in there and put a bitter taste in everybody's mouth. So it is really hard to decipher who you can help and who you can't help. And then with women, it's a little bit more different. I'm kind of a pretty decent sized dude. I'd be on the higher end scale of a pretty big guy. So for me, it's a lot easier for me to stop and help somebody, where it'd be a lot unsafer. And, it is still unsafe for me at times, but it's a lot unsafer for like a woman to stop and help. So, in some cases, it'd just be unsafe. It's really unsafe for a lot of people to do it, but it used to not be like that. Used to, you could stop and help somebody and it would just be helping them, and there wouldn't be as broad of people that want to do you harm. But in today's age, it's not as easy as that anymore. And so I guess my question to you guys is think about it. How hard is it to show a little bit of grace, or how hard is it to ask if hey, how are you doing? Is anything I could do for you? Is there anything and just breed in a little bit more compassion in the world. But there's just so much that we're kind of blind to right now. But even simple things, like if somebody is like that homeless guy, he might have just needed somebody to listen to him. And you don't have to necessarily help with cash or money, or have a conversation with him, though, right? Treat him like he's a human, right? Say, hey, I don't have anything currently to offer you, but I would like to, how are you? And just make him feel like he's not invisible. That could go a long way. But at the same time, you still need to be kind of aware of your surroundings, pay attention to who's behind you, and pay attention to what's around you, because we're so caught up in our cell phones in the current age that we take for granted normal things in life because of how caught up we are. And then sometimes that could put us in potentially a situation that we probably shouldn't be in, because we are so consumed by technology or phones or whatever, or sharing on this website or that website. Like one thing I've always thought was kind of bad is people go on there and they'll share they're on vacation, or they're checking into this place for dinner, or they're checking into that place for dinner. and you're like sharing too many personal things about your life online, that in the way that the world's shifting is maybe very risky and putting yourself at a lot more danger than you maybe should. But you know, I I keep asking myself, how can I breathe, put into the world more compassion and more understanding and more empathy, but also be safe while I'm doing, if that makes any sense. Like, because I don't want to get myself in a situation where, you could get hurt or something bad happen by trying to help somebody, but I don't want to be blind to the problems that the world has currently got, and not be able to try to help or try to lend a hand. And so how do you fix that problem? How, how do we make the world currently a better place in the next 10 years? Like, how can we on a daily basis shape the world to where it, it could be better now than, and there might not be a way to do it. And I guess there's probably no right answer, but one thing that it could be is our mindset, and how we look at stuff, and maybe be a little bit more present to what's around us, and see a little bit more and take in our surroundings, and look for the signs, right? The signs of suffering, or the signs of somebody just needing somebody to talk to, or just needed somebody to say, "Hey man, I see you. I just want to let you know I appreciate what I appreciate you. Thanks for your help," or just being a little bit more kind and understanding. And on not only that, positive. If somebody's having a bad day, if you're energetic, and you're positive, and you're putting a good energy in, you could shape turn their day around. Like, hey man, he was in like a really good mood, kind of like as I'm walking through to help this guy out, and everything in his life to me seems like it's going wrong, and he's so positive. It made me it kind of changed my attitude, and my thought process, like, I need to get what this guy's got, right? And he's standing there looking for help. And in my head, I'm thinking, I want what this guy, like, I want this. Why is this guy so positive? How do I get some of that, right? And I think it's our mindset. I think we can control our thoughts, and our positive. We could choose to have a bad day by our actions, or we could choose to be like, hey, this and this isn't going the best right now, but I'm not going to let it drag me down, and I'm going to have a good day, and I'm going to spread some positivity for somebody else. And so that's kind of what this episode was about, is just not being not let our lives sit us on autopilot, and not seeing and being around to notice the subtle changes in our everyday lives that could be indicating to us that somebody that we love, or we know, or we come into contact with every day could be struggling. And because we're so focused in our own lives, we've kind of missed the signs where we could be, a help, or where we could be a light to that person, or a positive change to that person. We've missed it because we're so caught up in our own lives that we forgot to be present in our own lives at the same time. And so let me know what you guys think. If you guys got any comments, I would love some feedback. If this helps anybody on anything, I would love to hear from you guys, and how you apply different things in your day, and how certain things help you, because I think we all have something to learn from one another, and we can all learn from one another, no matter your age, your gender or anything. Everybody has a story, and everybody has a something that makes them you and special. And I think we need to start looking more at what makes somebody them and appreciate more stuff in life. Because, like I said, our attitudes, especially at work, if you go to work and you're negative and you start the day off and you're irritated and you hate your job and you don't like this and you don't like that, and you're always saying this, I don't like this is bad and that's bad and this is bad, you're negatively affecting everybody else around you. So you're dragging everybody's moods down. So now everybody's in an irritated mood, which is just negatively affecting everybody else. And it all started with just one bad look on, one bad perspective. And so I heard this saying the other day, and it was like, you're tired, do it anyways. You don't feel good, do it anyways. So basically any excuse you have for why you can't do this or why you can't do that, do it anyways, right? And instead of making excuses for why you can't do this and why you can't do that, you just do it. And once you get it done, it's done, it's over. But stop saying why you can't do it and just start doing it, right? You don't have to have you don't need an invitation to help somebody. You can just do it. You don't need a invitation to check on somebody. You just do it. You don't need an invitation to chase your dreams. Just do it. You don't need an invitation to, anything in life that you need to do, whether you want to do it or don't want to do it, you got to just do it. And so I want to be able to figure out how I can apply this into my life on a daily basis, because there's so many times that I'll get discouraged in my own life, and, stuff's going pretty good. Like I said, I have a pretty good life, but I'm still getting discouraged and having a negative impact, like a negative perspective in somebody that's 36 degrees and they got a hole in their boot is got a better perspective than I have. And I think it's because of what we see on the internet about what is happiness and what happiness means. And happiness isn't money, right? You don't have to, I'm not saying money don't help people be happy, but you could have all the money in the world and still be unhappy. And you could have all the nice truck, the nice car, the nice clothes, electronics, food, and still be unhappy. And somebody with barely anything is not, they're happy. And I think it's because happiness is different to every person, but you don't have to, you don't have to compare what somebody else has and think that that's what's happy, because what happiness is, because when you get it, you might not be happy then. And so I think take a look at your life right now and look at all the good that you have going in your life, and remember that, there are some stuff in life that you might not like at this current moment, but there's so many things you have in your life that is going good and that is positive. And just remember that when you're going through your day, that not everybody's got the same things going on. So maybe sometimes be a little bit more compassionate and a little bit more understanding to the people around you. And you never know the impact that it could have on their life. And that's kind of all I got for you guys today. And like I said, I hope everybody's doing well. But tell me what you think, comments or anything like that. And just be a little bit more present in your life, right? Notice the stuff that's going around, no matter how big or small it is. Notice the small things in life and try to have a good attitude. I appreciate you guys. I hope you all have a good night.